She doesn't need to know how much it's worth. She wouldn't know what to do with it anyway. That's what my father said about me, his own daughter, 3 hours after my husband's casket was buried in the ground. I was still wearing my black dress, and I still had cemetery dirt on my shoes. And when I walked up to the front door of my parents' house that evening, I heard every word through the screen door. Their plan, the fake papers, the doctor who had never once checked on me, signing a paper saying I was crazy like it was nothing at all. But they didn't know I was listening. And they certainly didn't know what I would do next. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe. But only if you truly feel connected to this story. Drop your location and tell me what time it is where you are. I love knowing who's listening. My name is Patricia Sinclair. I'm 34 years old. And this is what happens when the people who are supposed to protect you become the very ones you need protection from. Now, let me take you back to a Tuesday morning in October, the day I buried my husband. It rained the morning of Daniel's funeral. Not a heavy pour, just a thin, steady drizzle that wouldn't go away. The kind of rain that doesn't let you forget it's there. The church was small, with white wooden walls, worn benches, and a crooked steeple on the edge of Braintree. Daniel would have liked it. He never wanted anything loud. About 40 people came. His co-workers from the software company, our neighbors on Elm Terrace, a few college friends who had driven down from New Hampshire. Helen Marsh, my best friend since 9th grade, sat beside me in the front row and held my hand so tight her knuckles turned white. I kept looking at the back of the church. 3 seats on the left, the ones I had saved in my mind for my parents and my sister Megan, stayed empty. No coats on them, no bags tucked underneath. I checked my phone under the hymnal. No missed calls, no texts, nothing. Helen leaned over. "Do you want me to call them?" I shook my head. "They know what day it is." The pastor said kind things about Daniel. 38 years old, software engineer, quiet, steady, the kind of man who fixed your porch light without being asked. A heart condition nobody caught until it was too late. 2 weeks from his first chest pain to a wooden coffin. We had been married 8 years. He handled the bills, the taxes, the insurance. I handled everything else. The groceries, the appointments, the frightening nights when his chest ached at 3 a.m. He used to say, "Patty, I've got the numbers. You've got me." And that was enough. That was the whole deal. After the burial, I stood by the grave in the rain. 40 people had come to say goodbye to my husband. None of them shared my last name before I got married. I didn't know yet why my family wasn't there. I told myself they were busy. I even felt guilty for not reminding them. I had no idea they were home, busy with something else entirely. The call came the next morning. I was still on the couch in yesterday's clothes when the phone rang. A 617 number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Sinclair, this is Daniel Kessler. I was your husband's estate attorney." Estate attorney? I didn't even know Daniel had one. "I'd like to meet with you today if possible. There are papers that need your attention." I drove to a brownstone office near Copley Square. A brass nameplate, tall windows, the kind of place Daniel would have walked past without a second look because he never cared about appearances. Kessler was in his early 50s, with gray hair at the sides of his head and reading glasses on a chain. He offered me water and got straight to the point. "Your husband wrote a will 18 months ago. He named you as the only person who would receive everything." He opened a folder and slid 3 property sheets across the desk. 3 rental apartments in the greater Boston area. Dorchester, Somerville, Cambridge. Their total value was about $2.4 million. And there was also a home on the shore in Cape Cod, worth about $1.5 million. I read the numbers twice, then a third time. Daniel owned all of these with no money owed on them. No loans, no mortgages. The rental apartments bring in steady money. Everything goes to you. I sat there with my mouth open, trying to make sense of the man who drove a 10-year-old Subaru and the man who apparently owned nearly $4 million worth of property. Kessler studied me for a moment. Then he took a business card from his jacket pocket and placed it on top of the folder. "Mrs. Sinclair, your husband planned very carefully. He wanted you to be safe." He paused. "If anyone at all, pressures you about this money or property, call me before you sign a single thing." It was a strange thing to say. I thanked him and slipped the card into my coat pocket. I left that office feeling like Daniel was still protecting me from somewhere I couldn't see. But I didn't understand yet why Kessler had been so careful with his warning. I wouldn't understand until that same evening. I drove to my parents' house in Quincy that evening, still in the same black coat, eyes still red and sore. I wanted to tell them about the will. I wanted to sit at the kitchen table where I grew up and hear my mother say something gentle, something like, "It's going to be okay, sweetheart." The porch light was on. I parked behind my father's truck and walked up the front steps. The screen door was latched, but the inside door was open a little, the way my mother always left it when the house got warm from cooking. I reached for the handle. Then I heard my name. Patricia doesn't need to know the details yet. My father's voice, low and firm, the way he sounds when he's leading a conversation he doesn't want anyone to interrupt. I stopped. My hand stayed an inch from the screen door. Kessler called me this afternoon. That was my father again. The son-in-law left her apartments, 3 of them, and a house on the Cape. Silence. Then Megan's voice. Sharp. Quick. How much? Close to 4 million. A longer silence. I could hear the clock on the fireplace ticking through the door. Then Megan. She can't keep that money. She doesn't even know how to pay an electric bill. My father made a low sound, the kind that means he agrees. I stood there on the porch, one hand still raised. The drizzle had stopped hours ago, but I was shaking like it hadn't. Inside that house were the only 3 people left in my family, and they were sitting around a table talking about my life like I was just a number on a list. But the next sentence, the one from my mother, that was the one that changed everything. My mother's voice came through the screen door sounding soft on the outside but cutting right through me. Daniel dying is the best thing that's happened to this family. Now we finally have a way out. I want you to sit with that sentence the way I had to. My husband, the man who brought my mother flowers on her birthday, who fixed my father's gutters every spring without being asked, had been dead for 16 days. And my mother called it the best thing. My knees almost gave out, but I stayed upright. I stayed quiet. My father picked up right where she left off. I talked to Feldman today. He'll sign a certificate. Grief disorder, mental trauma, unable to make money decisions. We file for guardianship. Megan becomes the appointed guardian. I already called a real estate agent in Barnstable about the Cape House. That was Megan. Casual, like she was ordering food. My mother again. Make sure you hide the paperwork. If Patricia sees any of it, the whole thing falls apart. I stood on that porch for another minute, maybe 2. My ears were ringing. My chest felt like someone had filled it with concrete. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice recorder, and pressed the red button. I held the phone close to the crack in the door and let it listen. They kept talking. Details, timelines, who to call, how to keep me in the dark. After 2 more minutes, I pressed stop. I turned around, walked down the steps, got in my car, and drove away. I didn't knock. I didn't go inside. I didn't cry. I drove 30 minutes in total silence. No music, no tears. Just one question playing over and over. How long had they been looking at me and seeing a wallet instead of a person? I sat at the kitchen table in the apartment Daniel and I had shared for 8 years. His coffee mug was still in the drying rack. The business card from Kessler sat in front of me, next to my phone with the recording on it. I called Helen at 11 at night. She picked up on the second ring. She always does when it's me. "Patty, what happened?" I told her all of it. The empty seats at the funeral, Kessler's office, the porch, every sentence I had heard through the screen door. Helen didn't interrupt. She didn't gasp or say anything in shock. She just listened. That's what makes Helen so sharp. She catches every detail, the way lawyers do. When I finished, her voice was firm and strong. "Patty, listen to me. Do not call your parents. Do not call Megan. First thing tomorrow, call Kessler, then call me. I know what to do." Helen is a paralegal at a real estate and estate law firm in downtown Boston. She spent 11 years working on cases about wills, guardianship papers, and property disputes. She understood what my family was doing before I even had words for it. What they're describing, using a doctor to say you're unable to make decisions without ever examining you, then filing for guardianship to control your money and property. That's not a family disagreement, Patty. That's a serious crime. Forgery. Fraud. We treat it like one. I let out a long breath for what felt like the first time in hours. There's someone at the Norfolk County District Attorney's office I've worked with, she continued. A detective who works on financial crimes against people who can't defend themselves. His name is Ray Campos. If we need him, and I think we will, I can make the call. I stared at Daniel's coffee mug across the table. He used to say I was stronger than I thought. I didn't believe him then, but I was starting to. My mother called the next morning at 9:15. Her voice was warm, practiced, and perfectly calm. Sweetie, I've been thinking about you all night. Why didn't you come by yesterday? We waited for you. They waited for me. I almost laughed. I was exhausted, Mom. Maybe another time. How about Sunday dinner? The whole family. Megan wants to see you. Your father has been worried. Sick. Worried sick. I kept my voice steady. Helen had coached me. Act normal. Don't let them know anything. By time. Sure, Mom. Sunday works. Good. We love you, sweetheart. You shouldn't be going through this alone. I hung up and right away called Kessler. He answered on the first ring, like he had been expecting this. Mr. Kessler, my father contacted you yesterday about my husband's estate. What exactly did he ask? A pause. He asked about the total value. He asked whether you were the only person to receive everything. And he asked what would happen if you were legally declared unable to make your own decisions. My stomach dropped. Mrs. Sinclair, I told him nothing beyond what anyone can look up, but his questions worried me. That's why I gave you my card. Daniel's attorney had seen it coming before I did. Kessler's voice sharpened. If your father files for guardianship and you don't respond in time, a judge could approve a temporary order in as few as 14 days. You need to get ahead of this. I'm filing an early objection today. Then he gave me one more name. Dr. Rebecca Winters, a fully certified psychiatrist, working on her own, with 20 years of experience. Schedule a mental health evaluation with her this week. If we have a real doctor's report showing you are fully capable, any fake certificate they file will fall apart right away. I wrote down the number and called before lunch. The first appointment was set for Thursday, but I didn't know yet that Megan had already made her own calls, and she wasn't waiting for the court either. Thursday afternoon, Dr. Rebecca Winters' office was in an old Victorian-style house that had been turned into a workspace near Brookline Village. Plants on the windowsill. No front desk assistant. She opened the door herself. The evaluation lasted 90 minutes. She asked about Daniel, about my daily routines, about whether I was sleeping, eating, and leaving the house. She asked about my childhood, about my parents. I told the truth, all of it. And she wrote steadily without reacting. At the end, she set her pen down and looked at me across the desk. Mrs. Sinclair, you are grieving. That is human. It is not a sickness. There is no sign at all that your thinking is affected or that you are unable to manage your own life. She signed the report, stamped it, and handed me the original in a sealed envelope. Keep this somewhere safe. I drove home feeling like I could breathe for the first time in a week. A licensed psychiatrist with 2 decades of experience had just confirmed in writing what Daniel always told me. I was capable. I was clear-headed. I was enough. What I didn't know, what Helen found out that same evening through someone she knew at Feldman's clinic, was that my father had visited Dr. Nathan Feldman that very afternoon. Same day. Same city. A very different result. Feldman, a regular family doctor, not a mental health doctor, had signed a paper saying that Patricia Harper Sinclair had a severe grief disorder and could not manage her personal or financial life. He had never met me, never set up an appointment with me, never once looked me in the eye. And here's the part that would matter most later. On Feldman's certificate, the line for the date of patient examination was left completely blank, because there was no examination. There was only a signature and a favor between golf partners. Sunday evening, I stood on the same porch where I had heard everything 5 days earlier. This time I knocked. My father opened the door with a smile I had never seen before. Too wide, too warm. He pulled out my chair at the dinner table. He poured my water. Gerald Harper had never poured anyone's water in 62 years. My mother had cooked chicken piccata, my favorite since I was 12. The house smelled like lemon and butter. Megan hugged me in the hallway. Her perfume was expensive. Her credit card debt was more expensive. We sat. We ate. My father guided the conversation like a man carefully parking a car. Careful, deliberate, watching every angle. So, sweetheart, have you had a chance to go through Daniel's things? Do you know what he left behind? I chewed slowly. The lawyer is still handling it. I don't really understand most of it yet. A look passed between my parents. Quick. Almost invisible, but I caught it. Gerald leaned forward. Finances are complicated. Sweetheart. Let your dad handle the lawyer stuff. You've got enough on your plate. Donna nodded. He's right, honey. You need to focus on getting better. Megan said nothing. She stared at her phone. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself to use the bathroom. On the way back, I passed my father's home office. The door was ajar. On his desk, half hidden under a newspaper, sat a large brown envelope stamped with the Norfolk County Court logo. I pulled out my phone and took a photo. 2 seconds. Then I walked back to the table and finished my chicken. Sitting at that table, watching 3 people I had known my whole life act the part of a loving family, I kept thinking, how many dinners before this one were also just a performance? How many times did I sit in this exact chair and miss every sign? Have you ever looked back at a moment with your family and realized nothing was what you thought it was? I'd love to know. Share it in the comments. I don't think I'm the only one. I drove home and opened the photo. The envelope's return address: Norfolk Probate and Family Court. The stamp across the front: Petition for Guardianship. They had already filed. Monday morning. I called Kessler before the coffee finished brewing. They filed, I said. I saw the envelope last night. Norfolk Probate Court. He was quiet for 3 seconds. I heard keys clicking. I'm looking at it now. Gerald Harper, the one filing. Megan Harper, the suggested guardian. Attached is a medical certificate signed by Dr. Nathan Feldman, stating that you do not have the mental ability to manage your life and your estate. Hearing it stated like that, in legal language, typed into a court system given a case number, made it real in a way the porch conversation hadn't. This was no longer family talk. This was a court filing. The first hearing is set for 14 days from the date they filed, Kessler continued. That gives us until October 29th. If we don't respond before then, a judge could issue a temporary guardianship order. Megan would have legal control over your money within the hour. 14 days. That's all that stood between me and losing everything Daniel had built. I'm filing our response this morning, Kessler said. Dr. Winter's report will be the main piece of evidence. That alone should make the judge stop and think. I called Helen next. Good, she said. Kessler handles the court side, but there's also a criminal side. And that's where Campos comes in. I talked to him yesterday. He wants to hear the recording, and he wants Feldman's certificate. How do we get it? It was filed with the court. Campos can request an official copy through proper channels. He said he'll have it within a week. A week. The clock was already ticking on 14 days, and we needed 7 of them just to confirm what I already knew, that Feldman had signed a document about a patient he had never seen. 14 days. I could feel every single one of them. The call came on Wednesday, day 3 of the 14. A woman from Harborview Property Group, the company that managed Daniel's Dorchester apartment, asked to speak with me. Her voice was careful, like she was reading from a script. Mrs. Sinclair, I'm calling because we received a request yesterday from a woman who said she was your legal guardian. She asked us to move all your rental income to a new bank account. I gripped the edge of the counter. What was her name? Megan Harper. She gave us a case number from Norfolk Probate Court and said the guardianship was already in place. It wasn't. The hearing hadn't happened. No judge had signed anything. And yet my sister had already called a property manager, pretended to have legal power she didn't have, and tried to move my money into her own account. I thanked the woman and asked her to do nothing until she heard from my attorney. She agreed. I called Kessler. He sent a legal letter to Harborview telling them to stop within the hour and reported the incident to Campos. This is important, Kessler said. She lied to a financial company and pretended to be a court-appointed guardian. That's not just rushing ahead of things. That's identity fraud. Helen texted me that evening. Megan just handed us another charge on a silver platter. That night, my mother called again. Warm, sweet, perfectly timed. Honey, I heard you've been difficult about the apartment situation. Why are you making this so hard? We're trying to help. Difficult? I had been called a lot of things in the last 2 weeks. Incapable. Unstable. Now difficult. I kept my voice flat. I'm not being difficult, Mom. I just want to understand things before I make decisions. Well, she said, and I could hear the kind act slip just a little. Don't take too long. She hung up first. Gerald showed up at my apartment the next afternoon. No phone call ahead. Just a knock, and there he was, holding 2 coffees and a paper bag from the bakery on Hancock Street. Thought I'd check on my girl, he said, stepping inside before I could decide whether to let him. He sat at the kitchen table, Daniel's table, and made small talk for exactly 10 minutes. The weather, the neighbor's dog, a Red Sox trade he didn't actually care about. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin stack of papers. Listen, sweetheart, I had a lawyer prepare these. It's just a temporary power of attorney. It lets me handle the real estate paperwork for you. Property taxes are coming due, insurance renewals, things you shouldn't have to worry about right now. He slid the papers across the table, with a blue pen on top. I looked down at the document. The top read, Durable General Power of Attorney. Not limited. Not temporary. General. It would give Gerald complete control over every financial decision in my life. Dad, I need to read this first. Give me a few days. His jaw tightened. Patty, time matters here. There are bills, deadlines. Daniel always told me to read before I sign. I think I should honor that. He couldn't argue with a dead man's advice. Not out loud, at least. He left the papers on the table and walked out without finishing his coffee. I photographed every page and sent them to Kessler. His reply came within an hour. Do not sign. This is a general power of attorney with no limits. If you sign this, your father can sell every property by tomorrow morning. Also, the attorney who wrote this, Robert Voss, is a former business partner of your father's. This was planned. The pen was still sitting on top of the papers, blue ink, uncapped, ready for me to make the biggest mistake of my life. I put the cap back on and dropped the pen in a drawer. Helen came over Friday night with her laptop and a yellow notepad covered in writing. Sit down, she said. I pulled everything I could from public records, and it's worse than we thought. She turned the screen toward me. Gerald Harper, a second mortgage on the Quincy house, still owing $320,000. A federal tax lien filed 8 months ago, $95,000. 2 overdue credit lines. A collections notice from a contractor he had refused to pay for a roof repair. Your father is 5 months behind on the mortgage. Helen said the bank sent a warning notice in August. She flipped the page. Megan Hopper, 4 credit cards, 3 frozen, 1 in. Collections. Total credit card debt, $180,000. 2 court cases brought by people she owed money to in the past 3 years. An eviction attempt from a landlord in Weymouth that was settled outside of court. Your sister has been spending money she doesn't have for years, Helen said. And your mother's name is also on the Quincy house loan. If Gerald loses it, Donna loses her home too. I stared at the numbers. Nearly $600,000 in total debt. My family was drowning, and Daniel's estate was worth almost $4 million. The math wasn't hard. I was their only way out. Helen closed the laptop and looked at me. Patty, they're not doing this because they think you can't manage money. They're doing this because they're desperate. You're the only exit they've got. I sat there for a long time, staring at the table, Daniel's table, where he used to lay out his spreadsheets and quietly, carefully build something that could last beyond him. He had never told me about the debt. He had never told me about a lot of things. But he had made sure every piece of property was in my name and mine alone. Now I understood why. The text messages started coming in on Saturday, day 6. First, from a college friend named Angela. Hey Patty. Megan called me yesterday. She said you haven't been eating. You're not leaving the house. You're refusing help from everyone. She sounded really worried. Are you okay? Then from my Aunt Carol. Sweetheart, your mother tells me you're really struggling. I want to come visit. Please let us help you. Then from a woman I barely knew. A second cousin in Connecticut. Praying for you, Patricia. Your family loves you so much. One by one, Megan was building a story. Not to me, around me. A story carefully planted across every person she could reach. Patricia is falling apart. Patricia can't function. Patricia needs someone to step in. And when the court date came, all those people would remember being told the same thing. I wanted to call every single one of them. I wanted to shout, "I'm fine. I'm standing in my kitchen making pasta. I went for a run this morning." Helen stopped me. If you start calling everyone to defend yourself, it looks exactly like what Megan described. Someone scared and out of control. Let your actions speak, not your panic. I put the phone down. It was the hardest thing I'd done all week. Then Lisa Parker, my closest friend from college, called directly. "Patty, I didn't believe a word of it, but you should know something." She paused. "Megan also asked me if I knew your bank account number. She said she needed it to help manage your bills." I closed my eyes. She wasn't just attacking my reputation. She wanted my bank information, my contacts, my good name. Megan was trying to tear apart every part of my life that I controlled, so that when the judge looked at me, all he'd see was a woman with nothing left. But Lisa didn't give her a thing, and that mattered more than Megan would ever know. Day 8. Helen drove me to the Norfolk County District Attorney's satellite office in Canton. Detective Ray Campos met us in a small meeting room with a metal table and no wall decorations. He was about 45. Broad shoulders, calm face. The kind of man who asks questions the way a surgeon makes cuts. Precise and unhurried. "Mrs. Sinclair, walk me through it from the beginning." I told him everything. The funeral, the porch, the recording, Feldman, the power of attorney, Megan's call to Harborview. He took notes without looking up. When I finished, he said, "Play the recording." I set my phone on the table and pressed play. My father's voice filled the room. Then my mother's, then Megan's. Campos listened to the whole thing without moving. When it ended, he put the cap back on his pen and looked at me. "The recording gives us good reason to open an investigation, but the key piece is Feldman's certificate. If I can prove he signed it without examining you, that's forgery, and handing it to the court makes it fraud against the court." "How do we get it?" I asked. "It was filed as part of the guardianship papers. I've already asked the court clerk for an official copy. I should have it in 5 to 7 days. Helen leaned forward. "And Megan pretending to be a guardian to move rental income?" "Identity fraud," Campos said. "A separate charge. We're documenting it." He looked at me directly. "Mrs. Sinclair, I've seen families do terrible things for money. But forging medical documents to take away someone's legal rights? That's not family drama. That's a crime. And I will treat it like one." He stood up. "In the meantime, don't confront them. Don't change your routine. Let them believe everything is going the way they planned." I nodded. We shook hands. His grip was firm and steady. Like a promise made without words. 5 to 7 days. The clock didn't stop. Day 10. My mother invited me to lunch. Just the two of us. A seafood place in Hull with a view of the harbor. We used to go there when I was little. Back when things seemed simpler, or back when I thought they were. She looked tired. Thinner than I remembered. When she hugged me at the door, she held on a moment too long. We ordered. She talked about the weather, the new neighbors, a recipe she had cut out from a magazine. Normal things. Safe things. And then the tears came. "I'm sorry I wasn't at the funeral," she said, her voice breaking. "I was scared. I saw you hurting so much and I didn't know what to say." I froze. I'm a terrible mother. Her tears were real. I believe that. What I don't believe is the reason behind them. She wiped her eyes and shifted smoothly, like a movie changing scenes. "Sweetheart, $4 million is a huge responsibility. I don't want anyone taking advantage of you. Anyone." She said that word while sitting right across from me. "Have you thought about letting Megan manage some of it? She's always been good with numbers." Megan. Good with numbers. The woman with $180,000 in credit card debt. I almost dropped the act. Almost. "I'll think about it, Mom." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Your father has everything ready. You just need to sign one little paper." When the bill came, she reached for her wallet. The waitress ran her card and came back 30 seconds later, leaning close with a quiet voice. "I'm sorry, ma'am. It's been declined." My mother's face went white. It must be the machine. I paid in cash. I didn't say a word, but I understood. Her card was declined. Her house was underwater. And the only plan she had was sitting across the table, refusing to sign. Her tears were real, but the love behind them had a price tag. Day 12. Campos called at 7 in the morning. I have Feldman's certificate, he said. And it's exactly what we expected. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened. The signature line is filled in. Nathan Feldman, MD. The diagnosis line reads, severe grief disorder with a clear inability to make financial and personal decisions. But the line for the date of patient examination, blank. And the line for the method of evaluation, also blank. I let out a slow breath. I pulled Feldman's appointment records for the date he signed the certificate. Your name doesn't appear anywhere. Not as Patricia Sinclair. Not as Patricia Harper. No entry, no file, no notes. He paused to let that settle. He signed a legal medical document saying you were unable to make decisions, without ever being in the same room as you. That's forgery. And because it was handed to a court as part of a guardianship filing, it's fraud against the court, which is a serious crime. What happens now? I'm getting a warrant for Feldman's arrest this morning. Once he's in police custody, I expect him to cooperate. Doctors usually do when their license is at risk. When he talks, he'll confirm who asked him to sign. And that connects everything back to your father, your mother, and your sister. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the street was quiet. A school bus went past. Detective Campos, when you go to my parents' house, I want to be there. A long pause. Are you sure? I need to see their faces. And they need to see mine. He agreed. Sunday morning, 10 a.m. At the Harper House in Quincy. 2 more days. I already knew what I would wear. The same black coat I wore to Daniel's funeral. Not for mourning this time. For closing a chapter. Day 13. Gerald called that evening. The act was gone. Patricia. Not sweetheart. Not honey. Patricia, I don't know who has been filling your head, but this little act of rebellion needs to stop. You need to sign the power of attorney. No. I already filed with the court. The hearing is Monday. You're going to embarrass this family in front of a judge. I know you filed, Dad. My attorney told me. Silence. I could hear him breathing. Then you hired a lawyer. You think you know what you're doing? I think this conversation should end here. You've never managed a single thing in your life. His voice cracked, not with sadness, but with anger. Daniel did everything for you. The bills, the taxes, the accounts, all of it. And now you think you can handle $4 million. You can't even, Dad. I kept my voice level. Flat like a wall. If you were truly trying to help me, you wouldn't need a doctor to say I'm crazy. Dead silence. 3 full seconds. That doctor examined you. No, he didn't. And we both know it. He hung up. I sat on the couch and stared at my hands. They were shaking, but not from fear. From the kind of anger that builds up deep inside you and stays warm for hours. I didn't realize until later that I had been recording the call. Not on purpose at first. I had been so focused on staying calm that I forgot I had hit record when I saw his name on the screen. But Massachusetts is a state where only one person in a call needs to agree to record it, and I was in the conversation. The recording was legal. And Gerald had just admitted on tape that he had filed the papers, that he knew about Feldman, and that he expected me to sign. Tomorrow was Sunday. One more night until it all ended. Saturday night, the apartment was quiet in a way that felt like it would last forever. I sat on the floor of the bedroom closet, the place that still smelled most like Daniel, and opened the small fireproof box he had kept on the top shelf. Inside, our marriage certificate, his life insurance papers, the property sheets Kessler had given me, and at the bottom, a sealed envelope with my name on it in his handwriting. I had found it the week after he died but hadn't opened it. I wasn't ready. Tonight I was. The letter was 1 page, written in blue ink. His handwriting was always too small, like he was trying to say more than the space allowed. Patty, if you're reading this, I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer. But I need you to know something I should have said out loud more often. You are stronger than you think. You've always been strong. You just never had permission to believe it. Not from your parents. Not from anyone. So here it is in writing. I believe in you. I always did. Daniel. I folded the letter and pressed it to my chest. And then I cried. Not the quiet kind. Not the kind you do at funerals. The deep, heavy kind that comes from a place inside you that you didn't even know was there. Daniel wrote that letter knowing his heart was failing. Knowing I would need it. Knowing exactly who might come for me when he was gone. I cried for 20 minutes. Then I washed my face. I put the letter in my coat pocket. I called Helen. Tomorrow I'm ready. Campos will be there at 10 o'clock. Kessler will be there at 10 o'clock. I'll be there at 9:30. Helen. Yeah. Thank you for believing me when no one else did. She was quiet for a moment. That's what the good ones do, Patty. We show up. I set my alarm for 6. I would be at my parents' house before any of them, because I wanted to be the one who knocked. Sunday morning, October 28th. Clear sky, no rain. Not this time. I pulled into my parents' driveway at 8 a.m. Same cracked pavement, same basketball hoop from 1996, rusted at the rim. I sat in the car for 2 full minutes, both hands on the wheel, breathing. Then I got out. Black coat, hair pulled back, no makeup. Daniel's letter in my left pocket, phone in my right. I knocked. My father opened the door in a flannel shirt and slippers. His eyebrows went up. Patricia, it's 8 in the morning. What are you? I need to talk to everyone, all 3 of you. Before things go any further. He studied my face. Whatever he saw there, he stepped aside. The house smelled like old coffee and stale toast. My mother was at the kitchen counter in her robe, pouring cream into a mug. Megan was curled on the sofa with a blanket, scrolling her phone. They both looked up when I walked in. Donna smiled. Automatic. Mechanical. Sweetheart, what a surprise. Megan didn't smile. She watched me the way a cat watches a door. I sat in the armchair across from the sofa. The same chair I had sat in as a kid, watching Saturday morning cartoons. Now I was watching 3 people who had worked together to take away all my legal rights. I want to hear it from you, I said. All of it. What the plan is. What you think is best for me. Gerald sat down across from me and squared his shoulders. This was his home ground. Fine, he said. We've been trying to tell you. This is about protecting your future, the estate, the properties. Your mother and I just want what's best. Donna nodded. Megan said nothing. I let him talk about responsibility, about family, about how money decisions were too much for someone in your condition. When he finished, I asked one question. When was the last time you saw Dr. Feldman, Dad? His face froze. Mid-breath, mid-sentence, mid-lie. And that's when the doorbell rang. Gerald looked at me. I didn't look away. The bell rang again. He walked to the door and opened it. Detective Ray Campos stood on the porch in a dark jacket, his badge visible on his belt. Behind him stood Daniel Kessler in a gray suit, and Helen Marsh with a large folder under her arm. Mr. Gerald Harper, Campos said. I'm Detective Ray Campos, Norfolk County Police. May I come in? Gerald's mouth opened. Nothing came out. He stepped back. They walked into the living room. Donna stood up from her stool so fast she knocked her coffee mug off the counter. It hit the tile and broke, and nobody picked it up. Megan pulled the blanket off her lap and sat up straight. Her phone fell between the sofa cushions. Campos moved to the center of the room like someone walking onto a stage. I'm here about a petition for guardianship filed with Norfolk Probate Court by you, Mr. Harper, on behalf of your daughter, Patricia Sinclair. That's a private family. When the medical certificate attached to that filing is fake, Mr. Harper, it becomes a criminal matter. The room went silent. Not just quiet. Silent, the kind of silence that has real weight. Campos reached into his jacket and pulled out a clear sleeve. Inside was a copy of Feldman's certificate. This certificate, signed by Dr. Nathan Feldman, says your daughter is mentally unable to care for herself. But Dr. Feldman never examined your daughter. The date of patient examination is blank. His appointment records show no record of her. He has no chart, no file, no notes. Donna sank back onto the stool. Megan's jaw dropped. Dr. Feldman was taken into custody at 7 a.m. This morning, Campos said. He has been cooperative. He let the word cooperative hang in the air. Gerald's face lost all its color. Not slowly, but all at once, like someone had pulled a plug. He knew what cooperative meant. It meant Feldman had talked. Gerald tried. I'll give him that. Feldman, whatever he told you, he misunderstood. I just asked him for a general opinion. I never told him to, Mr. Harper. Campos didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Dr. Feldman says that you personally asked him to sign a certificate saying your daughter was unable to make decisions, without ever examining her. He says your wife, Donna Harper, provided the exact words to use in the diagnosis. And he says your daughter, Megan Harper, knew about the plan and was part of it. Donna let out a sound. Half sob, half gasp. She pressed both hands to her mouth. Megan shot to her feet. I didn't know about the doctor. This was Dad's idea. I had nothing to do with. Gerald spun toward her. You called the real estate agent before we even had the papers. You called the property manager and pretended to be her guardian. Because you told me to. They turned on each other in under 10 seconds. Right there in front of a detective, an attorney, and me. I stood up. The room went still. Everyone looked at me. My father, mid-accusation. My mother, mid-sob. My sister, mid-excuse. Campos. Kessler. Helen. I spoke quietly, the way you speak when you want every word to land. I heard everything. The night of Daniel's funeral, I stood outside that door. I pointed to the front entrance, 5 feet away. And I listened. I heard Dad say Feldman would sign the papers. I heard Megan say she had already called an agent about the Cape House. And I heard Mom say, I looked directly at my mother. Daniel dying is the best thing that's happened to this family. Donna's face crumpled. Patricia, I didn't mean, you said it, Mom. Word for word. And I recorded it. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The broken coffee mug was still on the kitchen floor. And the silence was louder than anything any of them had ever said. I'm not here for revenge, I said. I'm here to tell you, I heard you. I know. And I choose not to forgive. Campos nodded toward the front door. 2 officers in uniform stepped inside. They had been waiting on the porch the whole time. Gerald Harper. Campos's voice was steady, by the book. You are under arrest for fraud against the court, forgery of medical documents, and working together to steal assets through a fake guardianship. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. My father stood still while the officer put the handcuffs on him. He looked at me once, not with anger, but with something closer to disbelief, like he had walked into a room he thought he owned and found every lock had been changed. Patricia, he said. You can't do this to your father. I didn't answer. Donna was next. She didn't fight it. Her wrists were so thin the handcuffs had to be adjusted. Tears ran down her face in 2 clean lines. Baby girl, I'm sorry. I was desperate. You have to understand. I looked at her. My eyes were red but dry. Desperation doesn't give you the right to declare me insane, Mom. She had no answer for that. The officer led her toward the door. Campos turned to Megan. Megan Harper, you are also under arrest for identity fraud, pretending to be a court-appointed guardian to a financial company, and attempted theft by deception. Megan's legs gave out. She grabbed the arm of the sofa. Patty, please. I just don't. One word. I didn't need another. They led all 3 of them out the front door and into separate vehicles. Across the street, Mrs. Kowalski stood on her lawn in her housecoat, watering can frozen in mid-air. The guy and kids next door watched from behind their screen door. A mail carrier slowed his truck, stared, and drove on. The living room was empty now. Just me, Helen, Kessler, and the smell of cold coffee and broken porcelain. Helen put her hand on my shoulder. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Helen drove. I sat in the passenger seat with my hands in my lap, staring at the road. We didn't talk for 15 minutes. She didn't turn on the radio. She just drove. And I just sat. And the world outside the windshield kept moving forward in a way that felt completely separate from what had just happened inside that house. Finally, I said it. I just sent my parents to jail. Helen didn't hesitate. No, they sent themselves. I rested my head against the window. The glass was cold. You know the thing I keep thinking about? When I was 6, my dad taught me to ride a bike in that same driveway. He held the back of the seat and ran beside me until I could balance on my own. He was laughing. I remember his laugh. Helen glanced at me. Same hands, I said. Same hands that held the seat. Those are the hands that signed a paper to take away my rights. She didn't try to comfort me with words. She reached over and squeezed my arm once, then put both hands back on the wheel. We pulled up to my apartment. She turned off the engine. Patty, you don't need to be strong tonight. You just did one of the hardest things a person can do. If you need to fall apart, this is the night for it. I unbuckled my seatbelt and looked at her. I've been falling apart for 3 weeks. I think tonight I just want to sleep. She nodded. I'll check on you in the morning. I walked inside. The apartment was exactly the way I had left it. Daniel's coffee mug still in the drying rack. The power of attorney still on the table. The blue pen still in the drawer. Everything in place. Everything the same. But I was different, and there was no going back from that. 2 weeks passed. Kessler called on a Tuesday with the full update. Gerald Harper was formally charged on 3 counts: fraud against the court, criminal forgery, and working together to steal assets through a fake guardianship process. He posted bail at $50,000 using the Quincy house as security, the same house that already had 2 loans against it. Donna Harper was charged on 2 counts: conspiracy and being an accomplice to fraud. She was released on her own recognizance but was banned from contacting me by court order. No calls, no texts, no messages sent through other people. Megan Harper was charged with identity fraud and attempted theft by deception. Her passport was taken. She was not allowed to leave the state of Massachusetts while her case was pending. Dr. Nathan Feldman had his medical license suspended while the Massachusetts Board of Registration in Medicine reviewed his case. He was charged with criminal forgery. He was working with the prosecutor in exchange for a possible lighter sentence. The guardianship filing was thrown out permanently. No refiling allowed. The judge's written decision noted clear and strong proof of a fake medical certificate and said the filing was an abuse of the guardianship process. I was confirmed as the sole legal owner of all 4 properties. No conditions, no oversight, no guardian, just me. Kessler also mentioned one more thing. Robert Voss, the attorney who had prepared the power of attorney Gerald brought to my apartment, was under investigation by the Massachusetts Board of Bar Overseers for his part in the scheme. You're clear, Mrs. Sinclair, Kessler said. Legally, financially, completely. Your husband made sure of that. And you finished what he started. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wall for a very long time. Not thinking, not planning. Just sitting in a silence that, for the first time in weeks, didn't feel like a threat. The call came 3 weeks later. An unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail. I wish I had. Patricia. My mother's voice, small and cracked, like a cup that's been glued back together one too many times. I know I'm not supposed to call. I know, but please, just 30 seconds. I should have hung up. I didn't. Your father is going to lose the house. The bank won't extend the loan. I don't know where I'm going to live, Patricia. I don't know what happens to me. I stood at the kitchen window, watching the branches of the oak tree move in a gray sky. Mom, you called me from a blocked number. You're breaking a court order right now. I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all of it. I was wrong. Your father was wrong. We were desperate. You were desperate, I said. So you decided to have me declared mentally unfit. You wanted a doctor to write a paper saying I couldn't think for myself. And then Megan. Megan would have sold everything Daniel left me. The apartments, the Cape House, every single thing he built, and I'd be locked in a guardianship, unable to make one decision about my own life. I paused. Did you think about what would have happened to me? Nothing. Just the sound of her breathing. I don't hate you, Mom. But I can't trust you. And I won't let you close enough to make me question my own mind again. I heard her cry. Quiet, controlled, the kind of crying that knows it has already lost. Don't call again. I hung up. Then I called Kessler to report the violation of the court order. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't feel strong. I felt like someone who had cut off something important and was learning to walk without it. But I was walking. That was the point. I spent the next few days undoing what Megan had built. Short emails. Simple words. No drama. Hi, Angela. I wanted to reach out and let you know I'm doing well. I have an attorney handling my affairs, and the situation Megan described to you was not accurate. I appreciate your concern. Patty. Aunt Carol. Thank you for checking in. I'm okay. Things have been hard, but I'm getting the right kind of help. Love you. I sent 7 of those emails. I didn't explain the arrests. I didn't mention the court case. I didn't go through Megan's story point by point to fight it. I just showed up, present, clear, whole, and let that be the answer. Lisa called that same afternoon. Patty. I knew from the moment Megan opened her mouth that it was all made up. I'm glad you're okay. Aunt Carol called the next morning. Sweetheart, I never believed that girl. She's been lying since she was 12 years old. You know that. We all know that. Not everyone had been fooled. Some people saw through it from the very beginning. They just didn't know how to say so until I gave them permission. That Friday, I drove to Cape Cod alone. The house was smaller than I had imagined. Pale blue wooden siding, white trim. A wraparound porch facing the Atlantic. The property manager had left the heat on. The floors were clean. The ocean was doing what it always does. Rolling in, pulling back, not caring about anything else. I stood on the porch with Daniel's letter in my hand. The wind pressed my coat flat against my side. I read his words again. You are stronger than you think. You've always been strong. You just never had permission to believe it. This time when I folded the letter, something was different. This time I believed him. 6 months later, I was living in the Cape house full-time. The move wasn't dramatic. I packed up the Boston apartment over 2 weekends, hired a small moving company, and closed the door on Elm Terrace without looking back. Daniel's coffee mug came with me. So did the fireproof box. The power of attorney papers went into a shredder. I signed up for a financial literacy course, an online program through a community college in Hyannis. 12 weeks, covering balance sheets, tax filings, and the basics of property management. Things Daniel used to handle. Things I was learning to handle myself. Kessler introduced me to a trustworthy property management company. They took over the 3 Boston apartments, finding tenants, handling repairs, collecting rent. I reviewed the monthly reports. I asked questions. I understood the answers. For the first time in my adult life, I knew exactly where my money was and what it was doing. In March, I took a part-time job at a nonprofit in Falmouth called Second Shore, a group that helps young widows rebuild their lives after losing their husbands. I didn't need the paycheck. I needed the purpose. I knew what it felt like to lose everything in 1 week and have no one standing behind you. Helen visited every month. We'd sit on the porch with a glass of wine and watch the waves turn gold at sunset. She never once said, "I told you so." She just showed up. That's what the good ones do. The sentencing came down in April. Gerald received 18 months in federal prison. Donna received 12 months of probation and 200 hours of community service. Megan was sentenced to 6 months in county jail, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. I didn't go to the sentencing hearing. I didn't need to hear anything else from that courtroom. The ocean was louder, and it had better things to say. I don't talk to my father. I don't talk to my mother. I don't talk to Megan. That's not anger. It's the structure I built to protect myself. I put up a wall where there used to be a door, and I'm not looking for the plans to tear it down. Gerald sent a letter from the federal facility in Devons. I recognized his handwriting on the envelope, the same tight, slanted writing he used to sign my birthday cards. I held it for about 10 seconds. Then I wrote "Return to sender" on the front and dropped it in the mailbox. Megan tried going through Lisa. A voicemail. "Tell Patty I'm sorry. Tell her I'll do anything." Lisa forwarded it. I listened to it once, then deleted it. I don't delete it to be cruel. I delete it because keeping it would mean leaving a loose thread, and loose threads get pulled. People ask me if I've forgiven them. Friends, co-workers at Second Shore, even my therapist, gently, during our 3rd session. Here's what I've learned. Forgiveness is putting down the weight. It's choosing not to carry their choices on your back every morning. I'm working on that part. Some days are easier than others. But boundaries are different. Boundaries aren't about feelings. They're about safety. Forgiveness is on the inside. It's between me and the weight. Boundaries are on the outside. They're between me and the people who put the weight there. I will not unlock the door. Not for apologies, not for tears, not for blood. Daniel wrote something in that letter that I come back to on the hard days. You've always been strong. You just never had permission to believe it. He was right. But I'd add one thing. I don't need permission anymore. Not from him, not from them, not from anyone. This morning, I woke up at 6, made coffee, and walked out to the porch. The ocean was doing its thing, the same thing it did yesterday, and the day before, and the day 100 years ago. Rolling in, pulling back, not asking anyone's permission. There's no one at my door asking me to sign anything. No one on the phone telling me I'm not capable. No one in the next room whispering about how to take what's mine while I'm still standing at a cemetery. Daniel left me 4 walls and a roof, 3 apartments, and a house by the sea. But the thing he actually left me, the thing no fake certificate or dishonest court filing could ever touch, was the belief that I deserve to be safe. That I am enough. That the quiet voice in my head saying you can do this is not lying. If you're listening to this and you're in a situation like mine, if someone in your life is telling you that you're not smart enough, not strong enough, not stable enough to make your own decisions, I need you to hear me. That is the language of someone who wants to control you. It is not the truth. The strongest form of getting back at someone isn't sending them to prison. It's building a life where the people who tried to destroy you have no power left. Not over your money, not over your mind, not over your morning coffee on a porch that belongs to you and no one else. I don't tell this story to teach a lesson. I tell it because when I was standing on that porch in Quincy listening to my family plan my destruction, I wish someone had told me a story like this first. So I'd know I wasn't crazy. And I'd know I had the right to fight back. That's my story. If it reached you, hit subscribe. Not for me, but so you don't miss the next one. These stories matter, and the people in this community understand why. If you know someone who needs to hear this, a friend, a sister, anyone being told they're not enough, send them this video. And if you want another story about someone who refused to break when everyone expected them to give up, check the link in the description. I'll see you there.